Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
We need to have a family meeting. Had her thoughts not been scattered hundreds of leagues away on tawny eyes and snow shrews, Lyanna Snow would have been wary of the look in her brother's eyes. As it was, Maester Luwin had brought 2 letters from the Ravenry to the breakfast table. One, from her uncle Benjen, was titled to all of his nieces and nephews and given to Robb as the eldest. The other was from Margaery Tyrell. Triggered curious glances from most of the table and concerned ones from her sisters, and was tucked into the pocket of her dress. It was burning a hole there as Lyanna fretted over the pain to be wrought. To not be dissuaded from her course, Lyanna should have burned the letter at once and prayed for no more to be sent. Unfortunately, her history with Willas Tyrell had never been of the sensible sort. Her wits focused on the matter of House Tyrell. Lyanna merely offered a distracted nod. As you wish. Her first clue that this was not be the typical family meeting was when Rickon didn't join them. While not verbose to each child specifically, Uncle Benjen did include particular well wishes for every one of his brother's children. The second was that Theon did join them, despite ostensibly never having any relation to the watch at all. Third, Robb sat on the edge of the bed closest to his door and read the letter aloud without any of his customary cheer. The final nail in the coffin had to be the second-to-last paragraph by an uncle who clearly did not understand how doomed romances were to work. The frost hasn't been quite as hard on my bones lately, thanks to these fireberries. They taste peculiar enough mixed in ale, but the burn could get you through a night's patrol without shaving years off your life. Half of my stores have already been depleted by brothers begging for this miracle berry from Ashai. Everyone seems to have my name on their tongue these days, and they all want to know when my family will send another care package. I do think that I am the most popular man in the wall now. Even the old dragon loyalists are lobbying the old bear to put me in their teams. A special thanks to Lyanna for Sir Lora's most considerate courting gifts. Ned wrote to me of how the Tyrell boy was smitten by you. Of course, I wasn't surprised. None of these nobles would have seen true beauty until one of our she-wolves ventured south. Really, I encourage all of my nieces to go and bewitch these foppish knights if these are the results. The last paragraph reiterated his hopes that they were all healthy and hale, and promised to visit in a few moons for another recruitment mission. Lyanna didn't quite hear all of that as she was too busy trying to glare a snickering Theon into submission while avoiding Robb's disappointed father face. Lyanna, do you have anything to tell me? Robb had managed to get Ned Stark's tone down well too. Yes, she said with quiet dignity. Sir Loras is a kind friend and I have no suitors to speak of. He scrutinized her face carefully. Did anyone tell you that your cheeks look hollow when you lie? The dark-haired girl immediately stopped biting the inside of her cheek. It was tragically too late to keep Bran from figuring out that Sir Loras referred to the Knight of Flowers. You met the Knight of Flowers, Lya. Her middle brother, all floppy dark auburn hair and wide crystal blue eyes, was bouncing over to look directly up at her. His white Kingsguard cloak fluttered behind him. He had yet to take his adored gift off. How was he? Did you see him fight? Did he win? Sir Loras is very skilled. There was a joust on his name day and he was the winner. And who did the crown his queen of love and beauty? Theon baited with a grin. He let out a shock of startled laughter when Lyanna failed to hide her reaction. Those Southron fops must have been shocked. I wish I had been there to see it. Why would they have been shocked? Sansa demanded archly. My sister is as beautiful as any of them, is she not? Well, not that I've seen any of them. Theon smirked, but sure, Lyanna is pretty enough. When can we expect the wedding? Wedding? Robb blanched. Absolutely not. All of us, and you especially, Sansa, are too young. There's not going to be a wedding, Lyanna chided. She glared at the Greyjoy again. Idiot just loved to wind everyone up. He knew it was my first tourney and gifted me with a crown, nothing romantic. Then his family gifted you expensive plants and his sister sent you a letter, the dark-haired boy added agreeably. Robb looked suitably horrified. Lyanna, Arya spoke up hesitantly. She looked around the room once before focusing on her eldest sister. If you think they plan to abuse us. Abuse? The Stark heir's gaze moved unerringly towards the mid-center of her dress, making Lyanna flush again. She aimed a kick in his direction, and he instinctively dodged it, though thankfully no longer boring holes in her stomach with his eyes alone. Okay, nothing with a child then. Blackmail. Lyanna's way too boring for any good blackmail, Theon disagreed. My gold's on a nobleman doing something stupid and her calling him out on it. House Tyrell's probably holding a grudge. Will both of you stop talking about me as if I'm not in the room? The sharp rebuke brought some moments of peace as Lyanna considered the options before her. She could keep silent and refuse to answer any of her brother's questions, but that would simply lead to Robb taking his concerns to their father. Likewise, should there be a danger present, Lyanna would be misfit not have warned her siblings beforehand. Robb was more sensible than father in some of these matters. While Ned Stark would react to injustice towards her by public retaliation, her older brother held a greater pragmatism within him. He knew there were some slights that simply had to be let go. I should like to keep it in this room, Lyanna finally said. Lady Stark, it was enough to secure her siblings' agreements, though Robb and Bran both flinched at the mention of their mother and her dislike of her husband's bastard. She left the actual explanation to Sansa, whose soft explanations were occasionally interjected with bouts of blunt Arya honesty as she withdrew the letter. The vellum was as thick and rich as any in Lord Stark's solar, expensive and sealed with a forest green wax. Imprinted on it was the elaborate rose of House Tyrell. She had to take a deep breath to steady her nerves before she slid one fingernail beneath it. When the letter was opened, it was evident that it contained 2 pages. The first was a list of seasonal dates and star formations, Sansa said flatly. Does he intend to wed you or not? Turning it over only revealed mathematical equations and a list of books as source recommendations. It's their estimate for when winter will come and how long they expect it to last. How do you know that? Theon smirked. I'm a genius, and it's written at the bottom of the page. Bran pointed to the underlined words. They think winter will come in 5 years and last for 10. A whole generation, the Snow murmured. She exchanged a shocked look with her elder brother. The North was aware of a more severe winter approaching after the long summer they had but a decade. If their estimates are correct, we've not prepared for that. We've not prepared for that at all, Robb breathed. Even if every house increases food production by 1/3, we'll have to empty our coffers to buy from the South or Essos. More than that, should the Crown increase taxes on northern ships again, she added darkly. There were benefits to being the closest confidante of the heir. Whenever these issues were discussed with Robb, albeit rarely, since father seemed determined to raise them as carefree summer children, Lyanna was informed soon after. They could often solicit the merchants of Wintertown or Maester Luwin for more information, and she had not been remiss in questioning Samwell at her earliest chance. He told her of Petter Baelish, a Riverlander awarded Master of Coin, and she had informed Robb in turn. He hadn't been pleased to learn his grandfather's bannermen responsible for the increased rate. What did she mean by sending us this? Robb had moved to sit beside her now. His tone had shifted from protective older brother to the heir of House Stark, signaling that this was no longer solely about her romantic woes. It filled her with pride to see him like this. Her ever-dutiful and precocious brother would make a great lord one day. Lyanna corrected softly. She had received notes enough to know. This is by Lord Willas' hand. Theon had drifted closer to read from above her. Sansa at her other side, Arya and Bran craning their necks behind them. The dark-haired girl turned to the second letter. There was another list of titles, most of them foreign to her and related to Dornish history or customs, and a brief summary of a concept called the bride price. Alien to her, but the concept was easy enough to understand. It was essentially a dowry split between the woman's house and herself, as a measure of protection should she become a widow. Underneath that was a list of items and finally, a request to continue correspondence. The final line was writ by a different hand and contained a flowery signature of Lady Madrigal-in-training. It was the trousers, Arya read aloud. What does that mean? I don't know, I'm more interested in the list here, Lyanna said. She felt the dual sensations of her heart soaring and her stomach plummeting at once. A bride price. Did he still intend to marry her? After her refusal, did Willas truly still consider her a match? 250,000 bushels of wheat, 100,000 bushels of barley, wheat and rye each, 10,000 wagons of dried fruit, fire, plums, apples, peaches, apricots, oranges and cherries, 10,000 heads of cattle, 20,000 of sheep. By the time the snow had finished reading them aloud, an absolute silence had suffused the room. Well, Theon finally said, he either intends to wed her or he thinks House Stark is holding a king hostage and desires to pay the ransom. Anyone hear anything odd from the crypts? Must everything be a jape to you? Sansa asked sharply. Her eyes were nearly shining as she looked at her sister. This is a fortune, enough to feed Winterfell throughout the whole winter, even should Wintertown be filled to capacity. He must care about you, Lyanna. No one could spend that much gold without loving the other person even a little. There was no doubt of affection on his part, she replied, and strange fluttering took precedence in her chest. This was a gods be damned king's ransom for her hand. It was a question of whether House Stark could afford the hidden costs of an alliance, and now it is a question of whether we can afford to forego the evident benefits of one. Her eldest brother's keen blue eyes studied the document, fingers twitching for quill and parchment. The Reach would be more likely to offer help if the next Lady Tyrell was of the North as well, discarding whatever schemes this Lord Willas has in mind. Do you think there would be any issues to a union? There would be great scandal to it, I think. He's the heir to a Lord Paramount and I'm a bastard. What does it matter? Bran's soft voice belied a look in his eyes that was almost sly. She knew there to be a mischief maker in her brother's heart, but it was startling to see calculation on his sweet face. Let them speak. You would be the Lady Tyrell. They wouldn't dare name the Lady Tyrell a bastard, not if they should like to visit Highgarden again. His family would not approve of me. Whom would that be? The brother that took you to Squire or the one that crowned you with roses, the sister that sends you such letters in her brother's stead? Sansa asked. That's half the family right there, and the others shouldn't be too difficult to charm when you put the effort into it. You have yet to meet Lady Olenna Tyrell. You can't win over everybody, Arya shot back. And you don't need to, you have the good opinion of the one man that matters most in this situation. The two trueborn daughters of Ned Stark exchanged surprised glances at supporting one another. With a grin, Arya raised her hand and Sansa high-fived her. I don't know how to be the lady of a great house. Now you're just fishing for excuses, Snow. You're smart. You can learn. Do you not want to marry him? Robb inquired. She blinked back at him, somewhat dazed by all of this. Did Lyanna think she could be happy as Lord Willas' wife? Yes, surprising enough. He was intelligent, considerate, patient, and perceptive. All of the qualities that father had espoused for her ideal husband, and quite handsome besides. He challenged and confused her, made her head spin and heart flutter, but also drew out reluctant smiles with his words. Did she think it was worth the risk? I wouldn't mind it. She confessed. I don't know. If you should refuse him, know that it will be done with my full-hearted support. The dark-haired girl nodded, pleased but not surprised. Robb wanted happiness for all of his siblings and would allow them to marry for love within reason, of course. Neither he nor father wanted to sell them to secure advantages for House Stark. Even with that said, she knew some offers had to be considered against the greater well-being of the North. As an heir and a brother, the eldest Stark carried affection in one hand and duty in the other. I hate to ask this of you. Lyanna believed him. The grimace on Robb's face was nothing short of truly pained and remorseful. But if Lord Willas is honorable, give his proposal due consideration. Correspond with him if you should like and determine what his expectations for House Stark are. I won't send you off as a lamb to slaughter, but we can't reject this opportunity out of hand either. And if you think there is a decent chance for felicity, try to accept him. My big brother, so adamant against his sisters being wed, advocating that I share illicit letters with a Southron lordling, Lyanna marveled. Willas Tyrell is a very persuasive man. Shouldn't we share this letter with father? Bran inquired. Robb looked even guiltier now. No. I don't know why the Tyrells chose this method to correspond with her rather than asking for public courtship like normal people, but we'll respect it for now. Don't tell anyone, and ask him why he isn't forwarding those letters to father instead of us, Laya. I will. The dark-haired girl looked down at the fluid script with a bemused expression. Just an hour ago I had been building up the courage to set this letter aflame, and now I'm writing to him instead. Willas Tyrell, why can't anything about you ever be simple? You are aware that this must never be spoken of outside of this room. Yes, my lord. Timon's eyes continued to flicker between the oilskin-covered vellum on the desk and himself with a respectful, near-awed gaze. The honey-haired lord could practically read the thoughts writ on his assistant's face. The conclusions had drawn him a brilliance unearned, for the flowers believed this merely support of his existing knowledge. Willas allowed the man his wonderment, though it had been as great a surprise for the Tyrell heir to learn this. Lyanna Snow, Visenya Targaryen, the youngest true-born daughter of the Silver Prince and the last red-scaled dragon in Westeros, the secondary heir to the Iron Throne, excepting one mere beggar uncle wandering the east. The unintentional coup of House Tyrell that had just become an even more valuable political piece, and conveniently enough, was the girl that he desired to marry anyway. Your position will have to be reallocated. Willas ran the possibilities through his head, a home under which he had significant influence afar from his grandmother's eye without any reason for an expanded ravenry. My Aunt Janna is married to Lord John Fossaway. He is a genial man and there will be a good position in New Barrel awaiting you. I understand. Timon didn't look surprised. The second those documents had passed under his eye, he must have known that his position became simultaneously more vulnerable and yet still more valuable. Had Willas not cultivated a reputation as a reasonable employer, he likely would have taken these secrets and ran, else betrayed them for gold. Will you require future reports? Every fortnight, lest anything important arises. The honey-haired lord tapped his fingers briskly on the desk. Keep an eye on Lady Leonette. I would like to take measure of her. Yes, my lord. The flowers looked at him hopefully. My sister, I think Lady Sierra should benefit most from staying in Highgarden, was Willa's light response, where she should serve as hostage to ensure good behavior. Yes, my lord, may I still write to her? The heir to House Tyrell allowed this, for Timon's loyalty and service had earned him such. It would have been more logical to remove the bastard altogether, but Willas abhorred discarding good talent. They concluded on the details of Timon's removal, the extra 100 dragons garnering more than its fair share of goodwill, and the man left soon after. He jotted down a reminder to have Margaery keep a closer eye on Sierra, and the stable hands to refuse any of the ladies-in-waiting steeds unless ordered to by his sister's hand. Had I known such an important secret was kept at the Citadel, I would have sent Garland. Willas inwardly sighed. The act was done. The mummers show kept and Timon relatively trustworthy. He had nothing more to complain of, particularly since his brothers and sister had other assigned duties. Life would be so much easier if I had a few more siblings to delegate to. Garland was vital to carrying out his plans for the next few moons. The two would soothe Willa's broken heart in the sunny beaches and refreshing waters of Bandalin, complete with pre-written letters sent every fortnight to Margaery describing the eldest Tyrell's recovery. He had taken special attention to crafting those letters. They had to strike the right balance between depressed and hopeful. If it veered towards the former, Mother would make a surprise visit to fret over her little boy in person. If the latter, Grandmother would demand him home to stop acting like a child and retake his responsibilities. In truth, that time recuperating would be spent in the Crossroads Inn at Riverdale. It was the closest he could get to Lyanna, without actually venturing into her uncle's lands, and taking residence in one of the few inns in the north. This would more than have the time for their letters to reach one another, and drastically shorten his courting, for he suspected many letters would be needed. He also estimated that he had 3 moons at best before his parents decided he had mourned enough. Willas was willing to take as many moons as necessary to win Lyanna over, though. For once in his life, he decided to take a page out of his friend Oberyn's book. He wouldn't let the northern she-wolf, who was too remarkable for her own good, simply walk away. He would be spontaneous. He would be reckless. He would drop everything and follow her. Mostly. He still had to make arrangements for his travels, set up a system to review ongoing business investments, teach Samwell to organize his correspondence and forward time-sensitive letters by messenger, write up a list of purchase caps for the steward, set up a timetable for crop rotation in the eastern sector, and notify Uncle Gareth that he wouldn't be able to listen to smallfolk petitions for the next few weeks. But after that, Willas would drop everything and follow her. Following Oberyn's example in anything, Willas reflected, an exasperated chuckle leaving him. This must be love. Lyanna held her breath and closed her eyes tightly as soft, thumping noises made their way closer. 1, 2, 3. The dark-haired girl counted up till 20, as the footsteps grew distant and her ears strained for any further interruptions. There was only the whisper of wind across the heavy curtains hiding her from view. When she was certain that she could not be found, the young girl unclasped her arms, allowing insights of dragonlords to peek out between her knees and her chest. Father had decreed that Lyanna could only read 2 hours for pleasure a day. That time had rather swiftly dwindled, though this book, being written in a dialect of Valyrian she had yet to fully grasp, was truly for her studies. She had even to bring a Valentine dictionary so that she may find the words that she did not know. It wasn't as though she was disobeying Father, not at all. This book was a vital part of her education. Lyanna was confident in this. So confident that she had decided to read the book on the windows of the 3rd floor, an arch carved into the walls with plenty of sunlight and a curtain to hide her. Because discretion was necessary to one's focus when one intended to study Valentinese. A modicum of comfort would be nice too. She grimaced, adjusting her body. While gowns were superior to trousers in one respect, the padding, they weren't ideal for hours of roughly carved stone. Maybe I could check the Ravenry to see if Will Margery sent me another letter. Her reply to the first one had been as brisk and businesslike as she could fashion it to be. Despite Sansa's complaints of the two behaving in a manner unacceptable for the songs, Lyanna had chosen to adopt a distance for these negotiations. And they were negotiations, no matter that Arya had scoffed at the silly grin she wore for most of the day. The stumble-skip of her heartbeat aside, she had sent back a polite expression of gratitude for the offer and inquired on why he had done so. Willas Tyrell would also have to answer for why the letter was sent to her and not, as would be proper, Lord Stark. It should still be a fortnight before the Raven reaches Highgarden though. Despite the geographical improbability of her reply, the dark-haired girl sidled into the Ravenry anyway. Maester Luwin informed her that nothing had arrived and laughed when his most devoted student blushed fireplum red. Lyanna didn't know how, but most of the senior members of the Stark household seemed to think that she was smitten with a Southron boy, namely Willas Tyrell. Thankfully, Lady Stark saw fit to dismiss the rumors. While the auburn-haired woman had looked askance at her once or twice during meals, she had yet to bring up the subject. Father had also been content to forget any mention of Rose Lords, betrothals, dances, and daughters flowered to wed. Lady Stark's reaction might be reason enough to wed Willas and damn the consequences. She hadn't anywhere in particular to go and so found herself in her nearest place of comfort. Lyanna's room was a mid-sized circular affair in the family wing of the castle. It was plain compared to the Southron decorated style of her true-born siblings, but filled with signs of its occupant. The table beside her bed was overflowing with books borrowed from the library. An oak-carved desk, commissioned on her 2 and 10th name day by Father, had a stack of parchment and neatly arrayed inkwells and quills. The curtains and bedspread were originally a pale gray painted over in scenes of nature and battle by herself, Bran and Sansa. The wall hangings were likewise old tablecloths redone by the three. Her harp held place of honor on the other dresser, clothes haphazardly thrown inside, while a padlocked chest held all of her accumulated gold. Under the bed were crates of bottled tinctures, herbs and flowers, a tourney sword and practice armor, and finally the letter from Lord Willas Tyrell. There was a new addition to the private enclosure today, and that would be a letter sealed by forest green wax. Lyanna promptly opened it to a decidedly familiar male hand. It wasn't a reply to her letter, as that had been sent only 2 days past, but it had foreseen her concerns. After a good 2 paragraphs referencing her stay in Highgarden and how pleased Margaery had been to spend time with her, it turned to the main issue. As you know, the circumstances between us are such that my father would not necessarily be pleased with a correspondence. He may even seek to end it should Lord Stark inform him of our continued acquaintance. Mayhaps it would be more prudent to forget you altogether, but such acts are easier spoken of than done. It cannot be helped that I am very much determined to befriend you regardless. It is the consequence of bewitchment, you see. The time that we have spent together, all too brief as it was, has piqued my interest and I hope has done the same to you. While I accept that I do not hold your confidence and affection yet, I refuse to accept that this state of affairs cannot change. Correspond with me. Give me a chance to assuage your concerns. Let me ensnare you as you have done me. Visit Highgarden again, and this time. Do not leave. Lord Willas fears that father's honor would end this unconventional courtship before it could even begin. Lyanna bit her lip sharply. Is there a plot? How much of this is born of a man's infatuation? There had to be a plot involved, didn't there? The letter spoke such kind words, but she couldn't allow herself to accept them. Honeyed words were the simplest and least costly form of manipulation there could be, and the letter was written by a Tyrell. Lyanna refused to believe them even when the words drew such a pretty picture for her. I should confess envy when my brothers danced with the most enchanting daylight star in the hall. You were a wonder in blue and silver, and had I dared, I would have stolen you as those wildlings do spearwives beyond the wall. At the least, I would have liked to hold you in my arms for every dance. The letter was signed, once again, by the hand of Margaery Tyrell. Thank the gods no one else had found this before her sort of romance with Willas was attributed to yet another one of his siblings. Still, the dark-haired girl had no doubts that she was blushing now. Her stomach was certainly doing that fell-swoop motion that occurred just as one was falling from a great height. That was so wait, how did that damn nosy Southron get a letter inside my bedroom? Loras pasted a smile, bright and brittle, on his face and refused to let it go, even as Lord Stannis Baratheon glowered over at him. He stood by Renly's shoulder, a hand's width closer than he typically did, in confidence of 2 pieces of knowledge. The first was that Renly's older brother was more than well aware of his unnatural inclinations and adamant in not acknowledging them whatsoever. The second was that his lover needed the comfort of his proximity when dealing with one of the morons that he was unfortunately saddled with as brothers. The Knight of Flowers wouldn't even be here if his own brother hadn't demanded it. You want a hunk of stone, the Lord of Dragonstone said flatly. A fossilized dragon egg, the brunette knight corrected. My eldest brother has a taste for rare historical artifacts and his name day will soon arrive. I would like to purchase a fossilized dragon egg from you. I'm told that there are a few hidden in the caverns of the castle. As far as bridal gifts to a Targaryen goes, one couldn't find better than a dragon egg. It wasn't possible to hatch them anymore, but that was hardly the point. Willas wanted Lyanna to have a piece of her heritage to hold onto, and so she would. Somehow becoming a besotted, love-struck fool had made his eldest brother even more bossy. Maybe he'll relax once Lyanna starts regularly gracing his bed. It was possible. Willas Tyrell was an optimist. A knight from my household will follow you everywhere, Stannis was talking. He should probably be listening at this point. He shall lead you down to the crypts to find your dragon egg, and then you shall directly make your way to my solar to discuss price. I won't accept any deviations on the path, and the gods help you, if this is a ploy to spy on my household, Willas Tyrell. A few more minutes of warnings and recriminations later, and a silver-haired, violet-eyed Dragonstone-born knight was leading them down. He had sneered at Loras twice now. Not that the brunette minded all that much. The Knight of Flowers wondered how quickly his attitude would change should he know that the last trueborn Targaryen in Westeros was being courted by his brother. Thank you for this, Loras whispered, low enough that only his lover could hear. I know you hate visiting Dragonstone. If it makes you happy, Renly sighed. He shot an exasperated glare back at the disdainful Crownslin knight. "We aren't actually here to spy on Stannies, are we?" "I'm no one's first choice for a spy," was the reply. As they walked down, he took mental notes of the pathway, defenses, servants, and most everything else anyway. Just because he was here for the dragon egg didn't mean he had to be lazy. Scoriat knew her Arilla Issa. Arya mouthed the words soundlessly to herself, making certain to allow not even a whisper to escape her hiding spot. "Where is my beer?" Her eldest sister had insisted on at least a few phrases memorized every day in exchange for archery lessons, and Arya had agreed to that. She had never specified which phrases, though, which was why the youngest she-wolf took it upon herself to find the most amusing if still acceptable sentences. It was surprising that Lyanna hadn't gone and written up a list herself, but she supposed Willas Tyrell was to blame for that. For one, his letters distracted Lyanna terribly, though Arya only minded when Sansa squealed in her ear about how romantic the Tyrell was. It was nice to see Lyanna so happy, even if her dreamy-eyed look was kind of stupid, and this whole love business kept her head in the clouds half the time. Arya would even swear that she walked into a wall once reading the letters, except that it wouldn't be true. Lyanna had far too much situational awareness to do that. She almost walked into a wall, though. The bigger reason that Willas Tyrell was at fault was because Robb and Lyanna spent every possible free minute holed up in the library. Arya had visited them with cups of tea before this, and the two were feverishly working out mathematical equations, and her brother swearing under his breath for every correct estimate the Rose Lord sent. Robb had impressive lungs because he managed a whole 2 minutes of swearing without taking a second breath when the final tally proved right. There were a few mistakes here and there, but the Starks would indeed be facing a decade of winter. Arya privately hoped that Willas Tyrell was everything Sansa declared he must be, because at this rate, a marriage between him and Lyanna was almost assured for anything short of outright war. The only definite thing that she knew about the man was that he was a pretty Southron with trust issues. This was why she was here today, silently practicing Bravosi Valyrian while crouched behind Raven food crates. There was a spy in Winterfell. Everyone agreed, but while the others were too busy with research and planning, Arya was not. She and Bran would be the ones to camp out at the Ravenry, the likeliest place for the spy to dispatch his messages and catch him. Catching a spy is so boring. She flipped to another page and started doodling on the margins. There was a knife and a hand mirror by her side, but even with her confidence, Arya knew only one would be used. Zokia Vale Peri Aprates. The wolves will eat the man slowly. Erg, I'm so hungry. Another hour passed before Arya called it a day and walked back down for lunch. Day 2 of Catch the Spy wasn't any more fruitful than Day 1, nor Day 3. By Day 4, it was merely Bran's insistence on the roof above the Ravenry being his ideal reading spot that kept them there. Day 5 had a scare with a rat that resulted in her grabbing it by the tail and tossing it out the window because no one made Arya Stark scream like that. Day 6 had her memorize 6 ways to insult one's mother in Bravosi. Day 7 bore fruit just after she had decided to pre-write a speech for Willas Tyrell. Audris Hedri Rini Si Nikella Avi Osanina. Hurt my sister and I'll kill you myself. Arya froze when she heard a pitter-patter by the stairs. Stone wasn't made to muffle sound and gave her plenty of warning to adjust her position. Her eye peeked directly between the thin opening of 2 crates, nose wrinkling at the scent of the slimy innards. She didn't know who would appear likely Maester Luwin on normal business, but a woman stepped through the doorway. Neither slim nor fat, tall nor short, plain brown of hair and dressed as a lady's handmaiden. Karen? Kayla? Oh, Corian, Arya narrowed her eyes. Willas Tyrell's influence is impressive if one of Mother's personal Riverland servants answer to him. The youngest she-wolf wasn't sure how the Rose Lord managed to win the loyalty of a servant working here since before she was even born, but the details could be found later. Arya certainly didn't think Corian had any reason to be here. Even if she wasn't spying, Winterfell's ravens were for the personal use of the family or Maester Luwin. Courting Lyanna or not, House Stark isn't going to tolerate spies in our castle, Arya inwardly huffed. Her shins were hurting a bit from having to crouch on the stone. Come on, come on. Send your letter already so I can move out of this blasted position. 1 Winterfell, 2 Winterfell, 3 Winterfell, 4 Winterfell, 36 Winterfells later, the raven was flying out of the tower and the servant had left. The footsteps had barely faded before the small, dark-haired girl jumped out with an exaggerated gasp the air. Oh, sweet fresh air at last, and ran to the window. She leaned out, peered up and was met with astonished river-blue eyes. Did you see which direction it flew in? Southwest. Bran reached down and grabbed the mirror she tossed him. Luckily his grasp was sure, for spy or not, Sansa would undoubtedly murder them both had her hand mirror broke. Did you see who it was? Corian. Arya had another step of her plan to put into process, but she watched with awed eyes as Bran scaled to the highest point of the Ravenry Tower, then slid down to the other edge. He jumped off to the nearby wall for the Hunter's Gate and balanced across the narrow ledge, past kennel and guest house to the nearby courtyards. There. She knew he would use the mirror's reflecting light to signal Theon, and it was only a matter of time from there before the Greyjoy shot the raven down. Now to go and get Robb. The little girl inwardly cackled to herself. He's going to be so mad. Arya turned swiftly on her heel and ran down the stairs, taking the bottom 3 steps at once in her rush. It was a shame that the raven would get hurt, though Theon had promised to make it a light wound. The important part was that her mission was a success. Lyanna was going to be so proud. It'll be funny to read Willas Tyrell's explanation for this too. So lost in her head was she that Arya's pace abruptly stopped by the unyielding force of Lady Catelyn Stark's legs. Oomph! Arya pinwheeled her arms, caught her balance and looked up to amused blue eyes. And where are you in a rush to be, sweetling? She scowled at her a little for the term of endearment. Only Rickon was young enough for that. I'm sorry for running into you, mother, but I need to speak to Robb. I found a spy in Winterfell. There is no harm done, but do try to walk there. Catelyn Stark said indulgently. The spy will still be waiting for you when you reach him. Yes, mother, the dark-haired Stark said agreeably. Once Lady Stark had turned the hallway, she commenced running. Robb and Lyanna had finished most of their research by now, so they would be in what Arya mentally called the war room, and that most everyone else agreed to be the old nursery playroom. Winterfell was a big castle meant for multiple branches of the Stark family, but it had been whittled down to just them in recent years, and many areas were thus abandoned. It was a shame. Arya would have liked a playmate that was less of a bookworm than Bran. The war room was paneled with wooden floors and walls, the expense written off for the safety of the children and the relative ease of logging in the north. Yellow sunshine poured in from the wide windows on the 3rd floor, keeping the entire room warm even in the winter frost. Half of the floor was covered in carpets, but one could still find etches of paint and scuff marks from Lyanna's many projects. There were plenty of pillows and blankets inside. A wide paneled desk surrounded by mismatched chairs dragged in years past, and even a direwolf banner on the walls. There were high shelves where books or anything important were kept, but absolutely zero weaponry, considering Rickon's curiosity. One hollow part of the wall, designed ages ago to hold quick-acting poisons for the family in case of invasion, and colder than the rest of the room, was now used as a makeshift ice box. Robb and Theon liked to use it to store bottles of arbor gold. Lyanna liked to use it to store various animal body parts used in her medical tinctures. There was nothing funnier than having the former open it to find owl eyeballs or rat spleens floating in pickled jars next to their spirits. I drink from those bottles, Robb had bellowed, gesturing to the slime stain on a wine bottle. Lyanna raised an eyebrow. You drank pulped swallow's liver too when you had a cold last se'night. Arya hadn't ever seen anyone progress from snowy pale to grayish green quite that quickly before. When she burst in, 2 heads of brown and auburn respectively were bent over a detailed map of the north, discussing a matter in intense whispers. Arya's entrance had them look up, Lyanna breaking into a small welcoming smile and Robb into a larger one. It was wiped away a second later. I found a spy. under their half-disbelieving expressions. She jumped into a quick explanation about her last few days and how Corian the maidservant was taking Tyrell gold. When it was done, she took a deep breath, relaxed and waited impatiently for her praise. Arya received a cuff behind the ear. "Arya Stark, what were you thinking tracking down a spy by yourself? You could have been hurt." "Lya," she made a hurt face. "I brought a knife with me and Bran was there. Neither you nor Bran know how to use a knife." "Well, yes, that's true, but I didn't face her either. I waited until Corian left before telling Bran." Lyanna paused and considered this. "That was good thinking on your part," she reluctantly admitted. Arya preened. "It probably wasn't necessary. I mean, Lord Willas' spies aren't going to try and hurt me, right? Not if he wants you to marry him." Her sister blushed, as she often did when Willas Tyrell and marriage were used in any conversation. "No, I suppose not, but I admire your caution anyway. It'll give me a chance to confront the spy too." Robb ruffled her hair, causing the messy black strands to spike up further. "Well done, Ar." To Lyanna he added, "Your suitor and I need to have some words. I understand this is a common precaution for Southrons, and I doubt he means us any harm, but this is still a Stark castle. I'll take him to task in our next letter," the eldest girl promised. This proved to be unnecessary when Theon appeared a little later with a still-closed letter in hand. Bran brought the Raven with him. They would have to nurse him back themselves, lest word spread in the castle and alert the spy. At least it was a flesh wound that barely clipped the edge of the wing. "One spy's account of Winterfell for the lady's pleasure," Theon said grandly, presenting the letter to Lyanna with a flourish. Her eyes skimmed over it quickly, and then the girl's expression froze. Robb," Lyanna finally said. "I don't think Corian's a Tyrell spy." "What makes you say that?" "Well, for one, I doubt him the kind of man to own brothels in King's Landing." Sansa Stark was on a mission. None of her other siblings had considered it, but that was due to their relative inexperience on such matters. It wasn't anything dangerous or glorious, but it was necessary nonetheless. It was, in fact, of the utmost importance to House Stark. This self-assigned job was none other than to prepare Lyanna Snow for a highborn Southron marriage. Despite Sansa's optimism on the matter, and she really, truly did think that her older sister would find her happily ever after in the Tyrell heir, the Stark did worry. Lyanna's baseborn status would inflict difficulties on her married life. Lord Willas didn't seem to care, at least not enough to retract his proposal, but that didn't mean others wouldn't. There were better than even odds that they would lash out at her sister even if she wasn't a bastard, simply due to her choice of husband. If so, Lyanna needed to establish herself at the earliest chance as someone worthy of one day being Lady Tyrell. She had to be elegant, she had to be poised, she had to show that a great house stood behind her every step of the way. Lyanna had to be magnificent, and Sansa would help her be so, as soon as she figured out exactly what that meant. What did Septa Mordane say that a lady needed to know? Sansa impatiently drummed her fingers on the wooden desk of her appointed library space. The red-haired girl had years of lessons on the subject, so she really should know the requirements by now. Needlepoint. There was also etiquette, the seven, and the importance of obeying one's husband. Lyanna didn't need help on the first, had probably already read up on the second, and for the third, well, she wished Willas Tyrell the best of luck if he thought to tame her sister. Reason and duty worked wonders on the dark-haired girl, but unquestioned obedience was a challenge for all of the Stark children, even herself. "My lessons are so useless." Sansa scowled, more irritated than distressed. She had a few more years to educate herself, if not track down a more useful teacher, but Lyanna was to be married soon. All right then. What have I learned that they haven't taught me? If the red-haired she-wolf went about this logically, then the goal was to prepare Lyanna for marriage. She would be an inexperienced bride in a faraway land with customs that were alien to her. Since there wasn't a guarantee that a northern party could be assembled for her, the preference would be to ready her as much as possible now. Father always said that the best knowledge came from those experienced in the subject. Who did Sansa know that had knowledge of being a foreign bride? Mother. She clapped her hands in delight. Robb had given explicit orders not to share any news of the courtship with their parents, but he hadn't forbidden her from discussing the general subjects. "Mother knows that I love stories. I'll simply have to ask her about the early days of her marriage during our next needlepoint session. Sansa wasn't quite so optimistic as to think Mother would be overjoyed for Lyanna's advantageous marriage. While the lady might begrudgingly admit to the benefits, both for House Stark and the North, Lyanna's involvement would turn the success sour. Nonetheless, Mother doted on her and was happy to share tales of betrothal and marriage to her inquisitive little girl. Sansa listened eagerly, asked an insightful question or two, and inwardly rejoiced when the subject distracted Septa Mordane from reading aloud from the seven-pointed star. It's not that Sansa wasn't faithful, but one could only listen to sermons of repentance so many times before they slipped into one ear and out the other. From her observations, Sansa had decided on a few simple things to be done. First, Lyanna needed a dowry. "I'm running through the numbers now," Robb informed her grimly. "Father set aside monetary amounts for each of you, but he left the furs, silver, and lumber unaccounted till you wed. It'll be tight, but we can cover the first from the Mountain Clan's taxes this year, and there should be enough silverwork in White Harbor to buy in advance. We'll send it south after he's taken her for wife. Maybe you could replace the lumber with plant clippings native to the north. I thought about that, and it would be nice if Lyanna had a reminder of home. The Tyrells wouldn't lack the common ones. Though there are some rare flowers past the wall, Uncle Benjen mentioned frost fires in the lands of always winter. He could harvest some of those and lungwort leaves too." Sansa left him to his mumblings, content that at least one necessary task was filled. Second, Lyanna needed knowledge. "But Sansa, Arya's already making me stake out the Ravenry with her." "I don't care." The red-haired girl refused to consider why those two were staking out the Ravenry of all places. "Just draw up a family tree for House Tyrell and then make a chart of the bannermen. Mainline names, castles, mottos, sigils, and historical friendships and / grudges. If there's anything interesting about their history, then add that too. Why aren't you doing it?" I'm doing all of the houses from Ambrose to Liber, and you're doing the rest." "Chin up, Bran." She ruffled the younger boy's hair just a few shades darker than her own. "I know it's a lot of work, but we have to help Lyanna get ready for her marriage. And just think about how many tourneys we'll see when we go south to visit her." Third, Lyanna needed a trousseau. It took a great deal of haggling and tears on Lyanna's side, not hers, before the older girl admitted to the need of an updated wardrobe. Even if House Tyrell planned to commission more gowns for her after she was wed, and Sansa thought it likely so, the Snow still needed to ready clothes of her own. Clothes meant fabric, which meant gold. Which meant the dark-haired girl needed to sacrifice her life's earnings. Robb had contributed his own coffers to the project, but since this was all to be done on the sly, they had to scrape together funds separate from Lord Stark's pocketbook. "It'll be fine," the red-haired girl cajoled, patting her consolingly on the back. "It's for a good cause. Years of hard work down the drain." Lyanna wept piteously as though she wasn't to marry into the second wealthiest house in Westeros. Her fingers still clung tightly to the chest of gold, Sansa having to pry each clenched white digit off one by one. "My money ye. Gods damn it, Lyanna, give me the gold." On the bright side, the local merchants were very accommodating to one that had as many dragons, stags, and crowns as Sansa did. Silver bought their silence, and gold had them send messengers to business partners up in White Harbor to send down their finer wares. Soon the girl had accumulated a respectable quantity of Pentoshi linen, Myrish silk, Bravosi cotton, Valeman wool, and many more fabrics dyed a variety of bright and vivid colors. Sansa sighed happily over her hoard, briefly envious that they were not for her own use. "Ah well, eldest born, first wed," she supposed. "Now that I think about it, all those years of sewing lessons may just pay off." River blue eyes gleamed as her fingers carded through the lustrous sky blue cotton in front of her. Lying wasn't part of Sansa's nature, but she would fall sick to fully appreciate this bounty. "Let's start with the wedding dress." Robb rubbed his forehead to combat the abating headache building up. He blinked his eyes as well, unsurprised by how dry they had gotten from staring at sheet after sheet of inked parchment. Looking up, he found that there was still one stack left to go through for the day, though it was blessedly short compared to his morning work. "Tea," Arya piped up, gesturing to the tea kettle in an offer to pour. The air was still rich with the scent of blood blossoms from all of the cups they had drunk so far. "Yes, please." The auburn-haired boy found it strange how quickly this little corner of the nursery got turned into a makeshift office. They had had to drag in 2 more desks, each set for a single person, and hammer on a few shelves for all of the references books they needed. The amount of candles, parchment, and inkwells they ran through was ridiculous. Where is everyone? Bran's doing his Reach project at the library. Sansa and Lyanna are working on the trousseau, and I think Theon got begged into taking Rickon out for a ride. The youngest Stark daughter rattled off. He promised to check up on the flower cache while he's out there. Right, any more spy letters? There weren't enough words available to describe the depth of Robb's anger when he discovered a spy in his castle. Lord Willas had admitted that the letter was placed there by an unknown servant bribed by one of his business partner's workers. But until that admission had come, the Starks were quietly combing Winterfell for any possible leaks. They had found 3 additional informants, alongside the brothel spy and her yet unknown master, and Robb thought there to be more. 2 informants could be traced back to Lords Bolton and Manderly respectively, though neither seemed to do more than send messages on the daily workings of the castle. The last was a child in the kitchens that Theon had followed once into Wintertown. The boy left a scrap of paper under a rock, and an unidentified man had come by to pick it up. They hadn't any guarantees to either's lord, but even in the north, the Master of Whispers was well known for his little birds. The auburn-haired boy's first instinct had been to toss all of them out of Winterfell. Luckily, more level heads had prevailed, and Lyanna recommended discussing the issue with Lord Willas. Robb wasn't exactly eager to talk spies in his castle with a man who absolutely would put a spy there had he the chance, but his sister insisted. The Tyrell was more studied on the subject than either of them, Lyanna argued. If they were to be family one day, they should learn to trust each other. Personally, Robb neither trusted nor wanted to trust Willas Tyrell. A marriage between him and Lyanna may be near inevitable at this point, but that didn't mean he liked the man who would be stealing one of his best friends from him. As Lyanna's brother, it was practically his duty to mislike the older man. The honey-haired lord's advice had been useful, though. His future good brother recommended leaving the spies alone, as danger known was danger halved, occasionally intervening to ensure pertinent knowledge wasn't shared and finding their own informants amongst the help. Robb hadn't started on the 3rd yet, but the others' parts were easy enough to implement. Theon would clip their wings with arrows, and Arya would chase the fallen birds around with makeshift pillowcase nets, and then extract the messages tied in their claws. After the first few times, the smarter ravens had even learnt to circle around and land in the Godswood if anyone other than Maester Luwin used them. Nothing for now. Arya had been assigned the all-important task of taking whichever reports they could get their hands on and editing them to ensure that certain details were left out. Her budding talent in forgery would be a skill Robb would have to leave out of future marriage negotiations. Can you go to the kitchens and arrange snacks for everyone then? Nothing messy, since Lyanna and Sansa will need clean fingers to sew. The dark-haired girl made a sharp salute, apparently still in the throes of her sellsword persona, and then marched off. Robb returned to nursing his tea. Duty is the bane of all pleasure. He briefly fantasized about a life where he needn't be the Stark heir, running off to become a knight in the Kingsguard or some other fantastical adventure. No, I have too many responsibilities to pick such a foolhardy path. It may be a nice dream, but it's impossible to truly deny one's duty to house and kin. Robb's days were filled with one responsibility after another. He had his usual lessons with Maester Luwin and Sir Roderick, of course, but afterward he was writing up dowry estimates, bartering fabrics with the merchants, reviewing spy reports, organizing an ever-growing nursery of plants, and quizzing Lyanna on Reach subjects from Bran's research. Those were all side details from the main bulk of his and Lyanna's work, though. The two of them had invested countless hours into, and likely would countless hours more, an action plan for surviving winter. The first Senate was spent double-checking Willas Tyrell's estimates. It was a good initial effort, but Robb had to tweak a few sums here and there for results that were simultaneously more depressing and more optimistic. The Tyrell's population count was off by a couple tens of thousands of people. Honestly, why did the South think that the North was a barren wasteland? But they also didn't know how much food could be scrounged from the land. The two eldest members of House Stark had researched, debated, calculated, paced and thrown the occasional book at the other, but eventually conservative estimates had been reached. Estimates on population count, land yield, accumulated gold, future expenses, glasshouse and seed, trade ships, travel time and more. They had a tentative plan on how to survive the next winter by planting, trading and building glasshouses to maximum capacity now, and how much gold they should store for future costs. It was more than a little messy, and he would have rewrite it into a semblance of order later, but it was something. Presenting it to father can wait a few moons till Lyanna's wed, Robb decided. Should Willas Tyrell come through with his bride price, we'll have enough of a cushion to invest into ships rather than buy from the Riverlands directly. It may be time for the North to regain some naval power of its own. As the days passed, Winterfell buzzed with the energies of its heirs hiding away in deserted rooms and implementing their many secret plots. Had the servants anything to say on this? It likely would be fantastical, fascinating, and false, for the little wolves and one odd kraken were keeping their mouths shut. The one man that could order them true, Eddard Stark, had decided to allow them this mischief. None of the gossip Ned overheard was malicious after all. Robb and Theon spent an afternoon setting up locks in all of the children's rooms. Lyanna and Bran cleared out entire shelves of the library. Sansa ordered more sewing thread from the market, and Arya loitered around the Ravenry for hours. Strange behavior, but nothing that would put them at risk, or that they were forbidden to do. Ned didn't want to stifle his children or press them for answers they weren't ready to give. No, it would be best for everyone by allowing them some harmless mischief. Besides, how much trouble could his children get into anyway? The answer was a great deal of trouble, not that Ned Stark knew. His eldest daughter and blood-born niece was mostly focused on the letters arriving every few days. Robb had begrudgingly acceded to secrecy and selected a maidservant that fetched fresh water every morn to receive them. It was a copper penny a letter, though the girl quickly made a stag's worth. Apparently Willas Tyrell was a very prolific writer. They discussed a great variety of subjects. Their current tasks, you'll have to forgive the speed and length of my correspondence. There's been more time scheduled for my relaxation in the last Senate alone than the preceding year, and my experience with such as you may be aware. My schedule at home is quite demanding, is minimal. I'd think to compare it to my recuperation from the ill-fated tourney all those years ago, but alas, the Crossroads Inn, while lacking in no such amenities as favored by the masses of Riverland nobles, has a prodigious dearth of reading material. I've chosen to dedicate my copious amounts of free time to tutoring Garland in the manifold duties of a lord, to his vocal displeasure. I do believe he may choose to purposefully replicate our grandfather's death any day now. Everyday habits. While I haven't the experience of a lordling, Robb is kind enough to take me to task in a manner not dissimilar to yourself and Garland. I haven't been tempted to ride off a cliffside yet, and truly, a morbid example by your hand, Lord Willas, but there's no shortage of snipes offered when my temper's engaged. The two of us dispel such miasma through sparring. Yet I suspect that if select the same option with a man I chose to wed, there will suspicions raised from even my end. Perhaps we may ride together instead, for I have a great fondness for the sport. Apple cider remains my favorite steed. Hobbies and secret pleasures. 3 teaspoons of grinded sandstone from the shores of Whispering Sound and a lit match, and you'll have the most spectacular sputtering sparks. The fire burns crimson for the first day, then orange to yellow to white, in 4 days' succession, and needs merely damp moss to feed it. I've kept several in mason jars around my office, and while mother frets dearly, the alchemy is harmless. Books that each had loved. How could you not have read The Wanderer's Tale? It is second to none for Meister's journey in the art of healing, and a requirement amongst the novices of the Citadel. While a few theories themselves may be suspect, others are downright brilliant. The Veilman's theory on inoculation * chief amongst them. I've spent more time in Winterfell's library with this book in hand than any other. You simply must read it and share your thoughts with me. The friends they made, Oberyn Nymeros Mardell. How can one possibly describe him? He is impetuous, changeful, careless, maddening, underhanded, deceptive, and by far one of the most fascinating men I've ever had the fortune to meet. He has a decided grasp of the classics and an ever-sharp, ever-ready tongue that, when combined with his pleasure in spreading chaos everywhere he goes, spurns friend and foe alike. I don't think one can decide on a position of neutrality for him. We share the same thirst for knowledge, though I haven't his independence or frankly reckless disregard for my own life to pursue it as he has. I'm certain that he'll be delighted with my course of action and desire to meet the woman that inspired it at once. I should warn you that Oberyn is well known for his appetites. He may rather forwardly paint his designs on you and on myself. Families and fears, we are 6 children, 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and as close as any siblings could be when there are none other to foster with us, except for Theon, whose circumstances are rather atypical. I hadn't realized how strange that was until I saw the many foster children in Highgarden and in many of the other castles that father visited along the way. There is a concern that this may burden Robb's leadership years from now, but I shall not worry you with these anxieties today. Instead, I will describe to you each of my siblings, for you seem insistent on making them your own one day. The values they held. You needn't fear any weakness on my part when it should come to shouldering your burdens. As you have said, I am insistent on calling Robb Stark brother. Mayhaps one day he will begrudgingly return such a favor, and I consider it my foremost duty to attend to the concerns of my family. The institution is as dear to my heart as it is to yours. As you have done me the kindness of warning me of your siblings, and to Lady Arya. She is free to kick me as much as she would like. Should I hurt you, I shall do the same. First, if any should share a story of childhood mischief with you concerning myself, they've spoken falsehood. I've never done anything of the sort. They're one's plans for the future. The knowledge is of a distinctly theoretical nature, I admit, but I have gained exposure from my role as Maester Luwin's erstwhile and secret assistant. While he hasn't allowed me to attend to a stitching or a bone setting or anything remotely interesting, I have been allowed full recourse of his medical cabinets. Many of the tinctures and potions in Winterfell are of my own make, and one gains a depth of experience in cleaning and dressing cuts and bruises when one has younger siblings for practice. My desire had been to apply those skills and see more than my own little corner of the world. And Willa's inexplicable affection for massive winged beasts that could set entire cities ablaze. They're absolutely magnificent beasts, Lady Lyanna. While I should not ignore their obvious capacity for destruction, the field of fire had occurred in Reach lands. After all, I think others do them great disservice to paint them solely as agents of the stranger. Had not one of the lost wonders of the world, the marvelous streets of Old Valyria, been carved under the beast's touch? The dragon riders had been able to carry tons of well-cut stone to remote areas of the land, melt sand and gravel by tongues of fire in unmet heat today, and build massive constructs to promote trade and the exchange of ideas. To think of how further we could progress with such roads now. And yet dragons are lost. Lyanna slowly found herself growing ever more impatient for his next letter. The Rose Lord had a sharp and clever wit, a breadth and depth of knowledge that astounded her, and a ready willingness to solicit her own opinion. He challenged those thoughts, forcing her to defend them with logic and facts, and readily admitted her own expertise in subjects unknown to him. When she offered suggestions, he replied honestly. When she asked questions, he answered earnestly. The Tyrell didn't seem to care that she was a woman, and maybe that shouldn't have surprised her. For Lady Olenna remained a distinct memory, but it did. Willas Tyrell was handsome, titled and wealthy, but it was the letter of an aqueduct on the Mander that won her over. She had suggested it as an easier way to move goods from one end of Highgarden to another, and draw some extra coin as a pleasure boat otherwise. His reply had brutally and efficiently cut that idea down, citing openings in defense, damage to natural beauty, and possible overflow to the fields. It was the sincerity of the response, the knowledge that most other men would have pat her on the head and sent her along for such words, that drew her. The Southron took her suggestion seriously and responded as such. The dark-haired girl might even say that he respected her. Gods above, I want to marry Willas Tyrell. Lyanna reclined on her bed, holding the parchment up to the air as dawn lit the distinctive inked hand. I want to wear gowns of green and gold, throw all the windows open in the summer heat, speak those silly Southron words in their silly Southron court. The Snow wasn't so naive that she didn't consider what marriage would bring her. Fine gowns, exquisite jewelry, and a true-born name, yes, but also praying in a sept, deflecting cutting words, and ever looking over her shoulder for the next lady to displant her. Lyanna would lose so much freedom in being wed. To all men truly, but Willas more than most, and yet she still desired it. How often shall I find a man who respects me? An auburn-haired wolf and a dark-haired kraken immediately came to mind, and she shuddered. One that I'm not disgusted to bed anyway. Willas Tyrell had to be the least difficult marital duty in Westeros. He was so very pretty. There still remained concern, though, and that was the question Willas had never properly answered before. Why did he want to marry her? Garland mumbled recriminations under his breath as he struggled to pull the damn wheelchair through the door. The ungainly size of the seat, coupled with those gleaming copper knobs and iron dials that did nothing but looked good, only added to the difficulty. The weight was nothing to dismiss either. Willas leaned leisurely back on their room settee, making swift work of his papers. It was the tilt of his smile, a smirk in all but name, that hinted at his amusement. Of course, his older brother wouldn't mind the mockery of the chair, seeing as he had tossed it together in his workshop. It had been necessary to the disguise, as had shedding all of their clothes for shades of blue and brown, common most to Riverland houses. He was Gavin Piper of Pink Maiden, a house bordering the Westerlands and an excuse for their heavier Southron accent. He had come here on business with his brother Warren, who didn't seem to have any issues with his descent into full infirmity. Naturally he would not, if it meant he could write letters all hours of the day, as Garland dragged his stupid chair around. Brother, I had thought we could discuss my 6 requirements for an investment pitch today, Willas said, as though he wasn't fully aware of the pain and suffering he caused those around him, including Garland. No, especially Garland. There are a few examples I can act out for you, and then you could. Why don't I check the stables for another letter? Garland interrupted desperately. Gods, not another business lesson. It's been 2 days, hasn't it? His brother's composure remained intact, but there was a certain brightness to his genial smile as he nodded. Garland had only ever seen such a quietly love-struck expression on Laura's before, and now his older brother, reserved, dutiful, detached Willas, had a more sedate companion to it. Since Willas was the last person he imagined to have such, Garland presupposed that Margaery and himself were not long for any sense in the world. He was mayhaps partial to Lady Lyanna, but he shuddered in acute sympathy for whatever poor sod would win Margaery's heart. The brief respite from lessons offered, Garland made swift course to the stables. A Ravenry would have been the more common location for those letters, but the Tyrells had arranged for local merchant partners to carry the messages instead. There was a boy at the stables whose father traveled to Wintertown every se'night to sell claywork, and he'd been doubling his trips since Willa's letter-based courting began. They'd gotten some decent gossip from the man as well. Apparently Lady Sansa Stark had been ordering more fine linen and thin cotton of late. His brother had been unbearably smug when he ordered a selection himself from Riverdale's local market and sent it north to be resold. In customary Willa's fashion, the fabrics were resold to profit, as apparently even his wife's trousseau couldn't be given a discount. They'll be suspicious of the fabrics are too cheap, won't they? Willas had protested to his rolled eyes. Honestly, Garland, you don't understand business. This had led those dreaded business lessons to help him understand such a set of circumstances that had the middle Tyrell brother quickly regretting his decision. He had forgotten how petty Willas could be. As a child, the merest slight could lead to a revenge campaign oft disguised by brotherly affection and familial devotion. Their mother still thought Willas had sat Margaery down and helped her memorize the full Tyrell family tree to the 5th generation out of the goodness of his heart. The brunette knight expected mild upset to be taken out on him in the form of more convoluted sums. When he returned without a letter but was pleasantly surprised, the boy had parchment in hand, thinner than the small pamphlets Lady Lyanna preferred to write but still enough to distract Willas. Garland tossed a whole silver stag to the child Freedom and then returned back. "Your lady love awaits a reply." Willas caught the throw easily, briefly shooting him a genuine smile. "I'll be off riding if you need me." "Don't need me. One moment please." A letter knife was close at hand and the honey-haired Lord de Fly broke the seal with it. "This one's thinner than usual." Garland waited impatiently, bouncing on the soles of his feet as Willas scanned through the letter. When he was done, his brother looked up, a strange look crossed between apprehension and giddiness on his face. "Is it an acceptance? If so, Margaery would have to be alerted to hurry up with those ceremony preparations." "Willas, no." The negation didn't seem to dim his brother's pleasure at the news. "She wants to speak to me personally, but I do think that her answer would be yes." Garland grinned back. Even with his prickled nerves, it was hard not to be pleased for a brother's happiness. "Excellent, let's ready preparations for the greatest scandal ever engaged by House Tyrell, shall we? You know that if you get caught, you'll be wedding him." "I don't think I'd mind," Lyanna confessed, a small smile playing at her lips, tugging the thick wolf cloak tighter around her. She placed a slippered foot on her brother's cupped hands and let him boost her up against the stone. Leaning over the edge, it was then Rob's turn to grab her forearms and be hoisted to the top of the narrow wall separating the godswood from the rest of the castle. The auburn-haired Stark turned to look at her, the light snowfall pulling the same dashes of crimson against his cheeks as he nudged her shoulder. "Is this it then?" "I don't think it can be." Lyanna clasped their hands together. "More for settling nerves than seeking warmth. It'll be the start of even more chaos, this time impossible to hide from father. He'll be satisfied when Lord Willas proves his daughter well settled," Rob assured. "As will I. He does make me happy, Rob. She wouldn't have married him if he had not, considering the extent of change to occur in her life." "I know, Lya." Her older brother squeezed her hands gently. "I simply wish that it had been a man closer to home to do so." "So do I," she acknowledged quietly. Looking over to the striking display of ash-burned stone against grim gray sky, the dark-haired girl considered the brightness and splendor of Highgarden. It was an elegant castle, of light and airy corridors, gilt-edged, gauze-spun and spilling over in green-gold life, but it was not Winterfell. How does Bran scale such heights with regularity? I don't know, but I certainly think highly of him for doing so. Rob winced at the unintentional pun, warily eyeing the half-frozen mud far, far beneath them. "Don't slip, Lyanna." It was easier said than done as the two eldest children of Lord Eddard Stark carefully and slowly slid themselves across the stone. Neither had Bran's courage to stand, but then, neither shared his slim, youthful figure either. They went past the iron wolf's head marking the connection to the gate, slid down to an empty guard's post, the single man in this storm lured away by Arya's hysterical loss of her sister's hand mirror, and slipped out into the woods. Lyanna didn't expect the snowfall to abate any time soon, but then, Sansa had more optimism than herself. Convinced that this was the moment of the proposal, and with a blushing sister offering little resistance that she would accept such an offer, the red-haired girl had insisted that she dress appropriately. In this case, it had been a well-fitted gown of forest green, bodice a dazzling array of gold and silver thread, long sleeves touched by a delicate ivy design and dove-gray slippers. One of the earlier works meant for a public ball, it would now become her betrothal dress. The exquisite gown was covered by Rob's thick gray cloak. Her own had been of fox pelt, immediately refused by Sansa for not conforming to her decided coloring scheme. I should have fought harder for my own, the Snow thought wistfully, nearly tripping over the hem. Robb was a full head taller than herself. It'll be so very romantic when I trip into an oak or stain my cheek with tree bark. Sansa Stark had allowed a concession with her hair at least. The dark brown hair was folded into a simple low bun, a few curls teased into ringlets around her face. Rarely one to find delight in a looking glass, Lyanna had still been pleased by the overall picture and embraced her sister in thanks. It wasn't practical, not in the least, but she looked lovely. And mayhaps a small part of her desired a certain Rose Lord to think the same. Lord Willas had sworn to meet her at the eastern edge of the Wolfswood, 20 meters from the castle's gates. How he intended to do so, he did not say, though Robb, for one, was eager to know. The man courting her lacked one trait alone in the eyes of society, a hale body, and if an admitted cripple could sneak onto Stark lands, one wondered how easily others might do the same. Despite her apprehension, Lyanna had snuck away for a planned tryst. Even with her elder brother at her shoulder, this was the most daring and romantic action she had ever taken. Lyanna could appreciate the scenery around her. The sentinels in the Wolfswood were ancient and boasted lengthy canopies to blot out the weak sunlight of the north. There was barely any underbrush as a result, but the few openings where branches did not cross left pools of light in the darkened, hushed landscape. They varied in size from the smallest, at little more than her handbreadth, to the largest spring-sized pools where the Stark children had once spun each other around. There was one approaching now, and in her giddy apprehension, the dark-haired girl indulged a whimsy she hadn't considered in years. Reaching out, she tugged at her brother's hand, taking his surprised glance as approval to pull him closer to the light. Turning to face him, she noted that time truly had passed. Robb possessed the same auburn hair and river blue eyes, but Lyanna had now to tip her head up when she grabbed both of his hands and directly copied his stance. Remember this. It didn't take more than a quarter's step to the left before her brother mirrored her, laughter on both lips as they spun around. Faster, 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 and Lyanna's bun came undone, dark hair spilling forth and errant strands kissing her lips, as their heads grew progressively more dizzy. Eventually Robb had to let her go, his sister drunk on movement alone as she moved giddily across the forest. The light-headed girl saw flashes of color: frosted pine, swaying auburn, dusted yellow, and then solid, dark gray. She looked up to intense, tawny eyes. "Hello," Lord Willas said quietly. "Sansa will be so upset that my hair is ruined," Lyanna thought. "Hello." A crooked smile tipped the handsome face across from her, and for a heartbeat, she wondered if he had been moving closer. "Hello." Robb's loud, bemused welcome from several trees away had her swiftly pushed back. "Brothers," Lyanna groused inwardly. Robb hadn't even done so purposefully, though she presumed he would have been quite pleased with himself if he had. Head starting to regain sense, she looked to the last individual in the clearing. "Hello, hello," Garland greeted back, a wide grin on his face. "Interesting dance there. We haven't anything like it in the south." Her cheeks burning crimson, she tipped her chin back up. "Yes, well, I'd be pleased to tutor you on the subject if you should like, Sir Garland." For some reason those words caused the older man to blanch. Not so quiet that she could not hear him, he muttered, "Oh dear gods, not another one." Puzzled, for she had meant it as a gentle tease, Lyanna looked questioningly at the older Tyrell. Lord Willas, though, had his gaze focused solely on her brother, rather unfair, she felt, considering the effort Sansa had gone to on her behalf, and a pleasant smile visible. Lord Robb, the man angled his walking stick until it was prominently between himself and the Stark heir. "A pleasure to meet you." It took her brother a few seconds to regain his senses, and then the Rose Lord was returned a bow every bit proper and gallant. "Lord Willas, welcome to the north. I'd offer our finest amenities to a man of your standing, but alas, the Starks haven't arranged courtships in the woods for centuries." "You needn't extend yourself," the Tyrell demurred. "The atmosphere alone overtakes any pleasure found in common refinements." That the honey-haired lord's eyes were turned all too visibly in her own direction, and Lyanna despaired, for the mess her hair had become was lost on no one. Robb bristled, despite the fact that securing a betrothal was presumably the end goal for her house, complimented the man's appearance, particularly the finely carved cane. Lord Willas accepted it gracefully and then lamented that his knee prevented him from enjoying the capers that so many children sought glee from. This was returned with a sally on the Rose Lordling's visit. Highgarden must be an oasis of efficiency and productivity for such time to be drawn. I told him to charm his future good family, Garland commented, making her jump. Lyanna had been watching the backhand fourth volley with fascination and hadn't noticed the knight sidling up to her. He took you at your word then, sir. The dark-haired girl could read Robb's moods as well as an experienced sailor could wind in clouds, and her brother's shoulders eased with each quip. May I ask how you traveled here? You may. There was a moment of silence afterward, and Lyanna made a soft tusk at Garland's grin. Oh, very well. How did you travel here? The brunette knight offered a concise summary of the two riding in from the Barrowlands, under the guise of minor sons from Pink Maiden, complete with the obligatory gripe about the twins. Lyanna commiserated her own experience with the weasels, and it was cruel, but oh, if any house embodied the creature in flesh and spirit, it was the phrase had been unpleasant. Garland mused on how there could be so many of them alive, lamenting at the whim of the gods that those who had been given so little be so numerous in number. That does explain why there are only 4 of you. An inquiring glance prompted. Humility aside, your family is rather attractive. Garland looked pleased. And yours as well, he complimented. If your sisters are in any measure as beautiful as yourself, Lord Robb will have no trouble in making them brides. He isn't in the habit of finding his sisters groomsmen. Shame, the boy has a talent for it. Garland nodded towards where the conversation had fallen to a close. Robb hadn't been eased into happiness yet, but there was a polite smile on his face as he nodded to Lord Willas. When the two walked back, her tall brother took shorter strides than the norm for the Tyrell to more comfortably step across the uneven ground. Garland, Lord Robb has kindly offered a brief tour of the Wolfswood for you, Willas announced. Lady Lyanna and I shall wait here. Will the lady be armed? Garland looked worriedly into the shadowy depths of the forest. I have heard that wild animals, wolves and bears and the like, hunt these grounds. They are found more deeply in the woods. Sir. Despite his words, her brother unclipped a dagger from his side and passed it to her. Lyanna accepted it, trying not to beam when Garland took that as assurance enough to leave his brother in her hands. It was hard not to love the Tyrell family then. Willas waited until their brothers were well out of hearing range before breaking the silence. Hello, hello. It was a greeting already exchanged, but it seemed heavier somehow, when they were alone in the hush of the woods. Lord Willas wore a dark gray doublet with white trimming the sleeves and black pants. He was unsurprisingly as attractive in stark colors as he was in his own. How should I speak to him? Lyanna's eyes sketched his form rapidly in her mind, entirely of their own violation. He looks so handsome, I haven't even prepared anything to say. But surely we have broken past the awkwardness of our last meeting. We are friends now, I should speak honestly. I'm glad you're here. The heartbeat later, less honestly. I should speak less honestly. A raised eyebrow, a flash of gentle humor. As am I, you were breathtaking in the sunlight. My hair came loose, she babbled, blushingly tucking one stray curl back. Sansa pulled it into a bun for me, she'll be so displeased. She wanted my appearance to be perfect when Sansa is your middle sister. Willas cast his mind back to the letters written in her own careful, practiced hand. The one with the talent for embroidery then, I admit. I'm curious to view her work. We should move in deeper then, Lyanna murmured. There are hot springs underneath the ground and we needn't move far within the forest for the snowfall to be caught by the canopy. The heavier snowstorms could turn a patch of ground into solid ice for weeks on end, but this one was light, and the flakes that did fall through melted before they reached the ground. Lord Willas allowed her to take lead, an admiration to his eyes that Lyanna attributed to the beautiful landscape, rather than her own flushed cheeks and wild curls. They came by beds of winter heather, by fallen boulders, pale lavender scenting the warm air and strands of misty vapor escaping the ground. She gestured towards one of the biggest rocks, stream brushed into smoothness, and unclasped her cloak. The hot springs are key to the Stark's dominion of the north. Lyanna told him, when true winter comes and the lands fall under ice and snow, it's to these lands that the people recede. Hundreds of houses lie empty even now in Wintertown, awaiting the day when the small folk retreat to the warmth that only House Stark can offer. A more decided advantage than the power bargained in the Reach, Willas murmured. She couldn't place the look in his eyes when the green and gold was uncovered, but he did lean closer to admire it. The snow blushed, expecting his eyes to focus on one area alone, but despite the darkening of his cheeks, he didn't give any notice of the slit around her neck. Instead, they brightened at the delicately embroidered gold roses and silver leaves on the bodice and trailed down to dust motes of gold at the skirt, meant to be fireflies amongst silver reeds. Your sister has a remarkable talent, he praised warmly. Lyanna made a note to share this with Sansa later on. This would make her little sister's day. And you wear those colors well, my lady. As do you, Lyanna gestured to the Stark-inspired ensemble, though I think you've mistaken them. A bastard's banners are black and white. The words had scarcely escaped her mouth when the dark-haired girl was inwardly wringing her own neck. Oh gods, how did she manage to insert her foot into her mouth so badly? Was Theon's drunken nature contagious? I meant no offense by that, Lord Willas. The words escaped me. You should use my given name, the honey-haired lord said. It's not improper for a wife to refer to her husband by his given name in public. The rapid shift in temperature stole her breath away, Lyanna thought firmly. Her heart certainly wasn't seeking to jump out of her own chest. Then you intend to? I would, Willas Tyrell said in a most deliberate manner, be honored to call you my wife. He doesn't mince around with words, does he? It wasn't the poetry-laden, flowery proposal that Sansa would have wanted, but Lyanna Snow didn't need it to be. It was succinct. It was genuine. It was perfect, or perhaps it was the man asking that decided it so. Focus, Lyanna, you can't accept yet. Willas, she wanted to pleasure of the intimacy at least once. I have to know, why did you ask for my hand? Anything short of murder would do for an answer. Lyanna did want to marry him. That's a complicated question, Willas began. It's strongly related, I suppose, to why you caught my eye at Highgarden. You were this strange northern maiden that spoke High Valyrian, studied healing, sparred with a sword and brought people to tears with your harp. I was captivated by your beauty, intrigued by your intellect, charmed by your kindness. You were a fascination, and despite the impropriety of my actions, I desired that same interest drawn to me. A half-smile was directed towards her. You have a talent for Sives, my lady. A foreboding feeling crept up her spine. None of his words were dangerous by themselves, but neither did he attest them for his choice. My brothers and sister had come to admire you as well. While I don't deny that I would have sought a mistress position had you been amenable, or even remotely obliging of the offer, it wouldn't have been enough. I hadn't met any woman quite like yourself in my life. I doubt I ever will. When you rode away from me, I knew that I couldn't simply let you go. At least not without a fighting chance of persuading you to marry me. Lyanna didn't think her face could grow any more crimson with those words, even as her mind fastened on one lingering detail. You offered for me before that, when I was still in Highgarden. Yes, my very first marriage proposal, Willas acknowledged. You refused it. I did. There wasn't any reason for a lord's heir to claim the hand of a bastard. Do you still think so? That one should not marry another of a different social standing, even should. The reddening of his cheeks was more visible now, met by a nervous grin. Even should both of their hearts be engaged? No, I don't. There was a buoyancy in her heart, everything felt light and free, and she knew that if she stood up she would positively dance back to the castle. Lord Willas claimed to love her, sort of. Then would you accept a marriage between a hidden princess and a crippled lord? Lady Lyanna's violet eyes were expressive enough that Willas could pinpoint the exact moment when elation gave way to confusion. The dark-haired girl merely cocked her head to the side, brow furrowed, lips pursed, and questioned in an utterly bemused tone. What? Willas kindly repeated the question. I don't understand. You're not secretly royalty, are you, Willas? He took a moment to savor the unintentional lapse of decorum for a young woman willing to attend a tryst in her father's woods. Lady Lyanna was surprisingly adherent of social mores and then pressed on. I understand that Lord Stark had never spoken of your mother, my lady. This led to a surprised widening of eyes and then a set of rapid shifts in expression. Confusion, consideration, realization, and then those delicate features settled on joy. I had thought it to be a Dornish woman. Lyanna spoke wonderingly. A cousin of House Martell was more than I had expected, but to finally know, she bit her lip, the words spilling out even faster. Is my mother alive? Does she know about me, where I am, where I'm going? Does she care? I'm sorry, Lady Lyanna. The words were emotive enough that her expression fell, hands twisting the dark green fabric of her dress. Regret shook him as she folded deeper into herself, features still and deceptively calm. And not yet knowing that Willas would steal a father from her as well. Mayhaps I should not have spoken. The wistfulness was cast away. He had already begun, and Lyanna would never forgive him should she walk into marriage without this knowledge. I have never had a mother before, she informed him, eyes down, so I don't understand why it should hurt to learn that I never will. Willas grasped around for the proper words. For all his intellect and wit, he hadn't experienced any such loss as she unknowingly had. This is of little comfort, but my mother would be your own. She's a kind woman. I think you would like her. I do. She was everything charming when we had met last. Lyanna managed a small smile. I don't understand why this would worry you. My mother may be a Martell, but I'm still a bastard. It is not your mother's blood that the world would judge you by. The Tyrell yearned for a more considerate way to approach this. Your mother was Princess Lyanna Stark, late wife of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. They were wed in secret by a Maester Maynard in Dorne. They had a daughter named Visenya that would be 4 and 10 today. Lyanna, you're a true-born princess. You're lying. Lyanna slipped off the boulder. He tried to follow her. She kicked his cane away. Her face pale, her hands clenched in anger. You're lying to me. There are documents, a marriage certificate in the prince's own hand. An annulment written up by the Maester. Your mother named you Visenya. My name is Lyanna Snow. The words cracked through the air, a whip shaking in inexperienced hands. My father is Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell. I am of the north. I am of House Stark. I am a Stark by way your mother, Willas concurred. And a Targaryen by way your father. Rhaegar Targaryen raped my aunt to death. He didn't. Oh, Lyanna, he didn't. Why can't you believe me? His cane wasn't within reach, but Willas could still travel short distances without it. The tears in her eyes moved him to do so, despite the lightning-fast rivulets of pain striking up his limb when he ungainly landed on it. The dark-haired girl paused, briefly stricken as she saw the visible discomfort. Lyanna didn't step away when he leaned towards her. The pale, snow-kissed skin he had so admired was clammy and trembling. I don't know how they've spoken of the Silver Prince here, but I had met him once as a child. At the tourney of Harrenhal, he sung a melody so sweet that all the women in the room were moved to tears. She shook her head, escaping the obvious comparisons to her own gift. Why are you lying to me? He was a good man, gentle and well-read. We spoke only once when I saw him at the Wentz Library. He helped me select a book on dragons from the higher shelves. Willas looked at her pleadingly. My family loved him. So many people loved him. He was a good man, Lyanna. He was a rapist. The dark-haired girl looked forlorn. He kidnapped my aunt and raped her. Sir Arthur Dayne, was he a good man? At her tentative nod, almost childlike in its search for reassurance, he continued. He was Prince Rhaegar's best friend. They say he died guarding the tower where Princess Lyanna was kept. Would a good man abscond with an innocent and allow her rape? No. Plaintively, she looked at him. When he leaned back for more support to his leg, she followed, and he smiled at her. No. Why would father claim be as his own bastard? Her mind provided an answer quickly, the intellect being spurned for once as she closed her eyes. Gods, the king will want to kill me. Neither Lord Stark nor I will ever allow that to happen, Willas answered. Would you allow me to protect you? You want to marry me because I'm a princess. The words lacked all inflection but felt accusatory nonetheless. I want to marry you for many reasons, Lyanna. Not least because you have stolen my heart. How can I trust that? How can I trust anything around me? Lyanna pulled herself away again, looking blankly at their surroundings. I haven't a father, I haven't a mother. Rob will come back soon, and gods, I haven't even a brother, do I? My entire life is a lie. Eyes of haunted violet met earnest gold, and neither would yield. A lie painted to protect my family, Willas. I'm a living danger to House Stark, and you would invite me to Highgarden. Why? To bear you dragon spawn, to have a contender for the throne, to drag mine blood into war. Somehow her intelligence remains attractive even when it's turned against me, the Rose Lord thought distantly. She drew her own conclusions from the silence, face twisting into a bitter caricature of a smile. Of course, House Tyrell wants a breeder. House Tyrell doesn't know anything of you. And should they learn, they would desire instead to trade you to the crown. Willas rebuked sharply. I don't desire war, Liara. No sane man ever has. I desire you irrespective of whether I may claim myself a princess, and I would wed you regardless of blood. Southron speak lies. The dark-haired girl reached for her cloak, and this time it was his turn to snatch it away. He looked pointedly towards his walking stick, still out of reach, when she glared. I spoke truthfully when I told you of your heritage. I needn't have done that. A prettily given lie and you would have accepted my hand, and I would have gained the breeder you accuse me of. That drew her up. Liara looked contemplative for a moment, evidently trying to work through this logic till her glare returned. If you had a chance, would you make a bid for the throne? Yes, Willas answered honestly. If I was reasonably certain that I could take the throne without risk to yourself or any children we had, I would make a claim. You confess that, and you expect me to wed you. Liara spoke incredulously. I certainly don't expect you to wed me after lying to you. Think reasonably of this, Willas. King Robert is my father's best friend. He won't accept a rebellion to throw the stags off their throne. He accepted one for his sister's sake, and I think could be persuaded for his great-nephew. Even then, I wouldn't start a rebellion when the usurper still holds the throne. I would wait until his foolish madman of a son rises to it, and then strike before another mad king could bring us to ruin. He saw at the tip of her tongue questions about the nature of the prince. Her curiosity was suppressed though, and violently so, for her sharp reply. I refuse to bring my family into your Southron games. We are all players in the great game, Liara, even the Starks. Wouldn't you rather they have an ally to start than be dragged in by others? He countered, a sinking in his stomach, a ripple of desperation as her eyes practically shuttered close had him nearly shout. I won't play. Willas, she still looked at him with disbelief. There was understanding, she knew where this would head, but, Willas, I love you, Liara Snow. He stepped closer, he took her hands, he looked imploringly into her eyes. I would wed you, and gladly. And if the price for a lifetime of happiness is to never make a claim for the throne, then I'll accept it. I won't make the first move. Should the others draw us in, then I'll play, and I'll do my damned hardest to protect you in House Stark, but I swear that I'll never start a war. Willas, her eyes were wide, they flickered strangely between his own and the trees behind them. Marry me, the Tyrell pressed. He didn't know how many times he had asked thus far, but damn the gods, for she hadn't yet said yes. Yes. Elation rose in him, but it didn't get far before she squeezed his hands and looked past his shoulders. Willas, there's a direwolf behind you. Why must I die before having stolen another kiss from him? Liara mourned, of all the regrets to appear in hand now. At least she was no longer in horrified denial over her own lineage. There was something about a man-sized, dusky gray direwolf with gleaming silver orbs and a sharp snarl of teeth that fled such considerations from mind. Bastard or trueborn, the thick, rich soil would drink her blood the same. Still holding her, Willas made a soft, shocked sound of distress, making an abortive movement to cover her with his own body. A distant part of Liara appreciated the gesture. It was terribly sweet, even if Bran would have been a more useful fighting partner than her now betrothed. The Rose Lord was unable to complete it regardless, as the direwolf gave a low, reverberating growl at the movement, sinking slowly on its hind legs. Not that she has that far to go, Liara noted absently. Her eyes focused to the minuscule space between the direwolf and the soil, and oh dear. She's about to pup, the dark-haired girl spoke. The she-wolf's stomach was bloated with a litter soon to come, its expansiveness at odds with the sinewy muscle, even thinness around its ribs. Liara's aster-toned eyes looked into the silver of the wolves, the slight sheen reminding her of the moon's glow as an unexpected sympathy bloomed in her stomach. She needs our help. Liara, Willas held tightly onto her shoulders, body still frozen in movement. This is a direwolf. I don't think there are many differences between a direwolf pupping and a regular hound. Have you ever delivered pups before? Well, yes, but Liara, this is a direwolf. I am aware. She slowly moves from the honey-haired man's shadow. The direwolf bristles slightly when she does so but does not growl. Liara doesn't know how, but some aspect of her is certain that this beast means her no harm. I wear your crest on my banner and you, my soul, in your eyes. Hello there. Liara's tone is soft and sweet, a mellow plea brought by a lifetime of coaxing little brothers and sisters to bed. My name's Liara. I live in the castle over there. My family rules these woods you're in. We have a fair number of beasts here, but you're the first direwolf I've ever seen. You're rather far from home, aren't you? Had Liara been able to see the Rose Lord's expression at the moment, she would have known the exact moment when Willas Tyrell realized he was hopelessly enamored with a madwoman. Then she would have seen the man's despair shift to resignation, followed by the Tyrell heir leaning down to grab his cane. The dark-haired girl did hear the rumbles in the beast's chests, though. She looked back over her shoulders, eyes filled with surprised delight at the mixed disapproval and determination on him. No, it couldn't have been the aqueduct letter. This had to be the moment when Liara Snow truly fell in love with Willas Tyrell. Now this is gallantry. It's all right, he doesn't mean you any harm now. Liara took a small step closer, then another and a third when the direwolf didn't react. She knelt down, a gentle hum in her throat and eyes carefully trained on those silver orbs. Often had the Stark children been told not to approach dangerous animals in the woods, particularly to avoid looking into their eyes in direct challenge, but she was compelled to do it now. This is Willas, he'll be helping you. The direwolf didn't growl, but she did bare her teeth warningly as the begrieved Southron appeared. Willas glowered back. I'm hardly any more pleased by this than you are, I assure you. A second later the man groaned. I am arguing with a direwolf. Liara patted his knee consolingly. What should we do? We'll need to find an enclosure of some sort to keep the drafts from reaching the pups. Warm water, linens, or fresh leaves if necessary, something to wrap them in. Willas listed off Liara. She unclasped her cloak, deftly drawing the dagger from beneath it so not to spook the direwolf and cutting through the fur. My dress has an inner skirt. Willas blanched and immediately reached for the ties on his vest. We may have flaunted propriety throughout this courtship, but the only man to see my wife in small clothes will be me. Her lips twitched. Of course, Willas. Childhood memories procured a burrow by the river soon enough, wind nipping at 2 pairs of bared arms as sleeves were ripped to be soaked in water. Willas proved a steady and experienced hand soon thereafter, Liara flitting around under his introductions, gathering supplies and humming a simple northern lullaby. As the direwolf was settled, she didn't appear to like the Tyrell overmuch, snarling and once even snapping warningly with her jaws when he came close, but Liara sat beside her and soothingly ran her fingers above her head. Animals hadn't ever been unkind to her truly, but this was a permissiveness that startled and delighted her at once. The snow had no dragons to prove her betrothed true, but a direwolf. I am a Stark. You truly are remarkable, Willas said, looking over to her in wonder. You're delivering a direwolf. Liara smiled at him brightly. As are you, I know. The man looked genuinely puzzled. I still can't believe it. Even if the Rose Lord couldn't understand his own actions, he responded with the calm, level head that the dark-haired girl had come to admire in him. The birth hadn't any complications, though the deadly nature of the beast certainly quickened her pulse, and Willas was soon bundling off one pup to another towards her. Liara would place them carefully out of the way, still within the mother's sight but hidden from stray gusts of icy wind. Eldest born, a male of gray and white fur. Second born, a gentle female of husky gray fur. Third born, dark gray and squirming. Fourth, a tawny brown with gray streaks. And fifth, one of purest black. The last-born one stole her heart. Still slick with birthing fluid, it was plain that her fur was as pure white as the northern snow and her eyes a hauntingly bright ruby. Unlike the others, this one was born with eyes open, and also unlike the others, the mother wolf receded when Liara tried to bring the pup closer to her. The runt of the litter, Willas remarked clinically, and an albino at that. He wouldn't have survived long out in the wild. She, Liara stressed softly, still caught in that ruby gaze, will be coming to Highgarden with me. She will. The tone in Willas Tyrell's voice was as enthused as Rickon's when additional lessons were offered. 5 pups. There was a bevy of emotions within her, and Liara couldn't quite center herself to them or explain how they had arrived. 5 pups, one for each of my Stark children. And this pup different yet alike to the others and without a mother to care for her. I would like to be the one to do so. To the silent pup in her arms she added, her name will be Ghost. I don't suppose Lord Stark could be any more furious should I steal another she-wolf from his lands. The honey-haired lord artfully arranged the bundled pups near their mother and then gently receded back to where Lyanna moved. We should have some time before they need to nurse. Do you think your brother can find us here? I have no doubt of it. Her thoughts hadn't flitted to the auburn-haired Stark, though he would undoubtedly be searching for them now. Instead, Lyanna remembered her concern from before and upon impulse reached up to kiss Willas. It was one part gratefulness for survival, another part thanks for his support and all the more, a deep well of affection for the man. When she moved her head back it was to be met with a dazzling smile from the Rose Lord. The first one I would forgive, Willas teased. But you have besmirched my innocence twice now, Lady Lyanna. I believe that you are now honor-bound to marry me. Let it not be said that a Stark denies their duty, my lord. A smile on her lips. She daringly reached up to press them against his once more, particularly one that brings such pleasure. Ghost stayed silently bundled in the warmth of her human's chest, Lyanna careful to assure her ease of movement as she turned her head and kissed Willas. The two lost themselves as lovers are wont to do, sharing kisses and mingled promises and wondrous joy. While outside of the little burrow, two brothers wandered around trying to figure out exactly where they'd gone.